My lesson title is Puppet Fairy Tales. My big idea is that throughout time and across cultures, theater has been a universal way to tell stories. The key concepts for this are artists use set design to immerse the audience into their story. It relates because I'm going to have the students use set design by making shoe boxes for a little play they're putting on. My second one is puppets can be used to relate the audience to the characters and stories. Again, the students will be using puppets as a way, as a characters in their story. And artists use stories to give their art meaning. So the art the students are making is going to be portraying a story. The lesson summary is we're going to learn about two artists, Giacomo Torelli and Dan Crowley. First one is a set designer, and the second one is a puppet maker. Then the students are going to choose a classic fairy tale, write a script based off the classic fairy tale. They're going to create a backdrop in a shoebox, create characters out of finger puppets, and then they're going to perform their script using the puppets in the backdrop for the rest of the class. The first day is just reading the fairy tales. So the students will come in and the teacher will talk to the class about classic fairy tales, have an open discussion about maybe the students' favorite fairy tales, any fairy tales they can think of, things like that. Anything that really they can think of. And then for the majority of the period, the students they'll get together in groups and then they'll choose one of a certain number of fairy tales. And yeah, each student will get a worksheet which will have uh, basic ideas about identifying what characters in the story, what the scene like setting is, like a summary for the scene, all things like that. And then the groups will read their stories together and fill out the worksheet. And then at the end of the period, the teacher will collect the students' worksheets for a completion grade and ask for any questions or concerns. The second day will consist of learning about the artists and the expectations for the project. So the intro will be very quick. Just passing back the worksheets and asking the class what they learned the previous day. And then for the majority of the period, uh, the students will be learning about the main points of the lesson and what is expected of them, and also about the artists. So, Giacomo Torelli, who was a 1600 set designer, and kind of learning about how even if it's a much more rudimentary version, they're going to be doing similar things that he did, like set design. Um, Same thing with Dan Crowley, who is a modern puppet maker, finger puppet maker. Um, yeah, and using his work to show that the students will be creating characters using finger puppets. Um, and then after the students learn what is expected of them for the project, the writing a script, making the sets and characters, and then performing, they will get back together with their groups and complete a brainstorming session. So uh, the brainstorming will just consist of things like words and pictures and just like small ideas about what they could do for their thing. So that maybe that's character design, maybe that's script ideas, anything like that. And then the ending portion will be very quick, just handing in the brainstorming page for completion grade and having a quick discussion about ideas. Day 3 will consist of actually making the puppets. So the beginning will be very quick, handing back the brainstorming pages and things like that. And then the students will sit with their groups and get all of their supplies. And then the teacher will guide the students in how to make a rudimentary finger puppet. It's a very simple thing. And then once each student has created their finger puppets, they will have time to design their characters using markers, crayons, things like that. Uh, so they should include major characters from their story that they will include in their performance. Yeah. And then at the very end, the students will hand in their finger puppets just for safekeeping for the teacher. Day 4 will consist of actually making this shoebox set. So for the beginning, students will just get all their work passed back to them from the lesson and reminded what they're doing. The majority of the lesson will be that the students will get together with their groups and get supplies like construction paper, markers, crayons, scissors, all things like that. And then the teacher will guide them through some ideas on how to turn their shoebox into a shadow box for their set. And then the students will be allowed to spend the rest of the period just making a set together in their groups. So, yeah. And then at the very end, the teacher will take back the boxes, puppets, and papers for safekeeping. Day 5 and the final day is the performance. So the class will gather around in the front, sit down, and then a group will volunteer and they will get their shoebox set out and each get 1 or 2 puppets that they made, whatever, however many characters they're going to play, and perform their scripts. The script should be 3 to 5 minutes, not very long. And they'll be graded based on a rubric. And yeah, after each presentation, their peers will be allowed to comment and compliment the performance. And then, yeah, at the very end, after every group has performed, they'll have an open discussion about what the students learned and what they liked about this project, things like that. In these pictures, you can use context clues to tell where it is taking place. For example, trees and mountains in the out means outside, and things like a window and flooring can indicate that it's inside. So you can also use color to indicate where a story is taking place. Like how light blue can indicate that it's daytime because the sky is lighter, and dark blue can indicate that it's nighttime when the sky is darker. A man that revolutionized set design is Giacomo Torelli. He's also known as the Great Wizard because he used very advanced technology for his time to create interesting sets. He was back in the 1600s, which is a very long time ago. And he was able to create sets that could revolve around each other. So you could switch between 2 sets very quickly using basically a system of pulleys. A newer type of theater that has been introduced is puppetry. Can you think of how puppets can be used to relate the audience to the characters in story? Try to think of a movie character that's like you and why. Maybe they look like you, they feel like you, they live in the same place as you do, or they have the same interests, anything like that. A man that's famous for his puppet art is Dan Crowley. He uses air dry clay and fabric to make finger puppets. So I think you've all used finger puppets before. They just go on your finger and you have a little character. But he is a great example of how very simple materials can make an incredible product. He tells classic stories through his characters. Can you think of how artists use stories to give their art more meaning? Look at this comic here and try to think of what story is being told. You might recognize that it's a classic story you've all heard, The Tortoise and the Hare. But in this depiction, you can see how the story is being told without having to use any words, but you can still understand what is being said. Characters in art can tell stories all the time. And now we're going to move on to writing our scripts and making puppets. I'm now going to be showing you how to make the finger puppets. This is what the finished product will look like. And with one flip of the finger, it can have a costume change. This is very rudimentary, but I don't have many materials right now. You will start with a blank sheet of paper like this. You can see here that there's a line in the middle and some dashed lines up here. First thing you're going to want to do is fold along the middle line. Like so. Now, normally you would glue along the dashed lines so that the puppets would stay together, but I don't currently have glue. So we're going to fold instead to keep them together. So now you will fold over on each side. And voila, a finished finger puppet. You can pop it open, stick your finger inside, and even draw a face on it.